Welcome to Volya Radio. Слава Україні!
Доброго вечора. You're listening to Volya Radio, the Twitter space for all news and information about Ukraine. Vitaємо. We're so happy to be here. Welcome, everyone. Adam, you're here. Welcome.
Dobry вечер. Here we go, book club. People are coming in. I gotta say, it's honestly strange waiting for a space to start. I'm not used to it.
I know. I was saying to Adam in the back channel before, usually, I'm used to coming up like 45 minutes ahead of when I'm starting to listen, 45 minutes ahead of when I'm going to start to find out what's been being talked about. We're not 24/7 anymore, as I'm sure everyone has noticed, so things are a little bit different. We have to start the space up every time. But we're here, we're excited, we've got a great new thing going, and we're so thankful to all of our wonderful listeners. We really have gotten so much support and so much help from all of our listeners in the last week or so. It's been a little hard for everybody, this transition, but I found out what wonderful listeners I have, and I found out what wonderful colleagues I have at Volya Radio. I mean, it's amazing how everybody pulled together. So it's great to be back. Over to you, Adam.
Okay, so where we left off, chapter 4. Everyone open your books. No, I'm just joking.
No, you got to let Lexicon talk first. That you can't.
No, I'm just, yeah. We'll discuss. I think we should invite some of our avid book club listeners to tell us how they want to proceed, if we just keep going or if we do a little review. Anyways, go ahead, Lex.
Thought you were actually do high culture for a while. Like, who doesn't love culture?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
we're very cultural, yes. I just wanted to say, everybody, please take a second to retweet the space and let people know we're here. It's more important now that we're not running all the time. So anyway, yeah, back to you.
Back to Lexicon, I say. Or not.
God, I don't know how to make this thing work. I don't know. I got soundboards. I got soundboards floating around here and everything. Okay, so I am pleased to to relate that my book did arrive in the mail. I have an actual hard book and all that, and it's exciting times. Right. But
I had to do that at least once. Sorry.
That's lovely. I love that. And I thought you guys were gonna do sort of cultural events, but I just want to say it's a really poignant kind of thing. I got a couple of books going now that I'm pretty excited about. But anyway, getting Mychailo Wynnyckyj's book, which I spell properly when commenting to you, when writing to anybody, but his poor family was like my family, stuck in the Polands so much that they don't know how to spell in English. But anyway, it's really poignant to read something that writes about stuff that's so important today, but before the full-scale invasion happened. And so, in a way, the author is very innocent, if you know what I mean. He's writing about the tremendous importance for Ukraine of these events that surround Maidan, Euromaidan, Revolution of Dignity, various things people call it. All those moments, he gives us a blow by blow, which is so exciting because I can remember sitting in my living room watching it and just like renewing my whole grip on the potential of my country. And so he's like I was then, and he's been there for 10 years already. He's a Ukrainian Canadian like me, but he's one who's retained his language, and he's come back to Ukraine. He's been there. He has a family. He's in the grip of stuff, but he's got a little bit of diaspora perspective, so it's kind of different. And I used to talk to him on Facebook back in those days, and he's telling us what he sees. And but he doesn't know what's gonna happen, and we're reading his book now, and we know what happened afterwards. So it's, it's an experience different from that of reading other books that are written since the massive invasion occurred, and it's so as I say, the innocence and the really gripping, immediacy of that perspective that, gets hold of me. Anyway, I'm thrilled I've got the book. I've been through that, and I'm reading other stuff that I've discovered since then. And, and I understood that so, if we want, like, one of the things that might be easy on listeners is to chat about various sort of cultural and current stuff, and then talk about the book a little later, or whichever direction you guys wanna go. I'm just saying I'm with you. It's been really great to have the book in hand. I love a physical book, and, I got lots of other stuff that, is exciting right now too. So back to you guys.
Thanks, Lexicon. It's great to hear from you. Yeah, Adam has a few. We wanted to start. We only have a 2 hour block tonight, as opposed to the 3 hours we used to do. So we're going to start with a little bit of basic. There was some cultural things, as you mentioned. I also wanted to refer to people as we're doing this. Adam has put up. In the second tweet in the nest is a wonderful article from Euromaidan Press, which was actually written uh, during during the Maidan before the massacres in February, and it's got a very nice map where you can really see where everything happened, and lots of pictures. And it's again, as you were saying, Lexicon, it's sort of it's the innocence of that time before before the horrible massacres happened, but also before post Maidan and the things that happened then. So it's just very interesting. But I'm going to turn this over to Adam now because he's got some of our cultural topics to go through for a little while before, and then we'll get to the book probably sometime after 7:30, probably more. In other words, 20 minutes from now. Back to you, Adam.
Well, what you think? Kirello the Tanner? Or some
Sure.
news?
Whatever floats your boat.
Oh,
I just
just like my
the
wife
DNA.
making me pick.
I'm sorry. The DNA thing is really fascinating. I didn't actually look at it, but the title, I mean, it didn't have a chance to, but the title looks great if you want to do that at some point too. But it's your choice.
Okay, sorry. I'm just going to put out a tweet just of the PDF of the story. It's one I read before on the thing that shall not be named. It was the first one I read, and it's actually my favorite Ukrainian folktale, and it's the one I always come back to. And it's there. It's in the nest now. Stalling, talking over. So it's the one I always come back to for me, and I'm always reminded of it because of our good friend General Budanov, because it's his first name as well. So, and there's some historical precedent for the story, which I just found today. I looked up the story, but then I also came across another PDF that I'll get into a tweet after. That's some of the possible historical precedents that may have made this story more real than we thought it was. So here it is, the biggest, the baddest. It should be a movie. Kirello Kojumiaka. It sounds much better po ukrainskому, but it's Kirello the Tanner. In the days when there was a prince at Kiev, a dragon dwelt beyond the town walls and exacted tribute of the townsfolk, either a man or a maid had they to give him yearly. The turn came for the prince's own daughter to go to the dragon. He sent her to him, for he had to do as the townfolk did. So lovely was the princess as words cannot say, and the dragon fell in love with her at the sight. And knowing this to be so, the princess was kind to her captor and spoke sweetly to him. Tell me, dragon, is there a man anywhere on this earth who could get the better of you? She asked him. This was when she had been with him for some days. There is such a man. He lives in Kyiv, on the high bank of the Dnipro River, the dragon said. He is a tanner and a man so strong that he always soaks no fewer than 12 hides at a time. He soaks them in the Dnipro, and once they have lain in the water, they grow very heavy. Now I've tried catching hold of them underwater once or twice just to see if he could pull them out again and drag them out to the bank, and he could easily, and me with them if I had let him. The tanner is the one man I stand in fear of. The princess took this in and began trying to think of a way of sending news of herself to her father and getting back home to him. She was quite alone and had no one with her to save a pigeon she had reared when still at Kyiv and brought along with her. Long thought she had decided to write to her father. There is a man in Kyiv, Kirilla the tanner, by name, she wrote. I beg you to try to prevail on him, or have others prevail on him, to fight the dragon and free me, unhappy maid that I am, from captivity. If words will not shower him with gifts, and let nobody speak to him, save the great courtesy, lest he take offense at some turn of phrase. To the end of my days will I pray for you both, and ask God to watch over you. Having written this, she tied the letter to the pigeon's wing and let the pigeon fly out through the window. The dragon has a house, apparently, with windows, but they're openable. The pigeon soared up to the sky and flew straight home. The prince's children, who had been running about in the courtyard, saw it and cried, Father, father, sister's pigeon is here. The prince's heart flooded with joy at the news, only to grow heavy again when he had time to reflect. My child must be dead, killed by the dragon, he said to himself. He coaxed the pigeon to light on his hand, and lo, there was a note tied to its wing. He read it through and at once summoned the elders. Is there a man in Kyiv named Kirilla the tanner? He asked. There is, prince. He lives in the Dnipro's high bank, the elders replied. How are we to approach him so that he won't get offended and does as we ask? To this they had no answer, so they talked it over and decided to send the oldest of the men of Kyiv to speak to Kirilla. The envoys set out at once. They came to Kirilla's hut, opened the door, and stood there frozen to the spot. For the tanner sat on the floor, his back to them, twisting and squeezing 12 raw hides all at the same time with his bare hands. They had a glimpse of his snow-white beard bobbing up and down as he worked. One of the envoys coughed, and Kirilla was startled and twisted the skin so hard that they tore in his hands. He turned to face the old men, and they bowed low and began telling him who had sent them and why. They fell on their knees before him, but to no avail. What was to be done? Pardon me 1 sec. What was to be done? Back they went to the prince, as sad can be. That's very sad. And the prince thought for a long time and decided to send the youngest of the men of Kyiv to Kirilla. So they tried the oldest guy, and now they're trying the youngest guy. Classic Robin. The prince thought again. He thought for a long time, and he sent some young men to Kirilla. Oh, sorry, I skipped a paragraph. But the younger envoys did not succeed any more than the older ones, for the tanner met all their pleas with silence and sat there as dark as thunder. The prince thought again. He thought for a long time, and he sent some young children to Kirilla. And when the children came to the tanner's hut, and falling on their knees before him, began to plead and cry, he too was moved to tears. Very well, I will do as you ask, said he. He went to the prince and asked for 12 barrels of tar and 12 cartloads of tow. These were brought. He twined the tow around himself and smeared tar over it, and taking a mace that weighed all of 10 pounds, went to fight the dragon. Is it to fight me you have come, Kirilla, or to make peace with me? The dragon asked. To fight you, you cursed monster. Never would I make peace with the likes of you, Kirilla replied. They began to fight, and the earth quaked and rumbled beneath them. The dragon would rush at Kirilla and make to bite him, and a piece of tar would come away in his fangs. He would rush at him again, and a mouthful of tow would stick between them, and Kirilla would strike the dragon with his mace and drive him into the ground. So hot did the dragon become that it was as though he were on fire. He would run to the Dnipro for a dip and drink of the cooling water, and the tanner would twine some tow around himself and smear it over with tar. Every time the dragon rushed out of the water and came at Kirilla, the tanner would wave his mace and strike him with it. The dragon would come at him again and again. Kirilla would strike him so hard that the sound echoed throughout everywhere, I guess. They fought and fought till the smoke rose and clouds and sparks flew all about them. Kirilla's blows came hard and fast, and the dragon flamed like a plowshare in a forge. He coughed and sputtered, and the ground trembled beneath him. The townsfolk watched the battle from the hilltops, and they stood there as if frozen on the spot. All of a sudden, there came a great crash. The dragon fell to the ground so hard that it quaked and shook, and the townsfolk on the hilltops clapped their hands and cheered Kirilla the tanner. The dragon lay dead, and Kirilla, who had slain him and freed the princess, now led her to her father. The prince did not know how to thank Kirilla enough, and from that day on, the part of Kyiv where Kirilla lived came to be known as Tanner's Place. The end.
Thank you. That's a wonderful story. Now, but I'm a little slow tonight. How are you relating this to what's going on today?
Today, no, I'm not. I just
Okay.
it's the one that I read first on when I started hosting on that other thing over there that shall not be named, and I was like, oh, I want to do it again because it's my favorite one since I was a kid. And the PDF that I posted does not have the proper spelling of Kyiv, but I really like the illustrations, and it's actually the one that I remember, I think, reading at Ukrainian bilingual school when I was a kid, because I remembered all those pictures quite well. I didn't see which hand went up first. Robin, did you?
Let's go to James, then Lexicon. I'm not 100% sure, but Lexicon will forgive me if I'm wrong. Hi, James.
Hey, Robin. Hi, Adam. Hey, Lexicon. No, I just wanted to ask, did I hear this right that the princess didn't marry the tanner? Because that's usually the conclusion of these kind of things.
Yeah, no, he just got a part of Kyiv named after him, which is, I think, part of the the next portion of the tale that I was going to get into, which is that a PDF I found of the historical precedents and the historical stuff going on that may have caused this legend to come to be, James.
Well, not even a bag of gold or anything. Well, okay, I guess it's
The neighborhood is still, like, I'm pretty sure Kozhumiaka, to this day, maybe, but we'll check it out.
Well, that is something. Consolation prize. It
Gold
feels like
spends,
sorry.
but oh no, don't be sorry. That's my job. Sorry, Lexicon, go ahead.
Well, yeah, it's so interesting, these old tales, and I mean, people keep them, they hold on to them. I used to know some elders who talked to me. They were people who knew Europe and they knew Asia and medieval times. Because we know Kievan Rus, it comes out of like the times of Charlemagne, things I actually learned in our Western European, heritage schools and in Canada and stuff and the US. But in fact, in Cave and Ruth, these tales were around. And so these are high medieval times. But so I used to know some people who were knowledgeable historians and anthropologists and so on, and they talked about the tales. I've got one of a bookmark I happen to have from a Ukrainian bookstore in Toronto is a Ukrainian edition of Grimm's fairy tales for young and old. It says on it, and what an interpretation that these elder friends of mine explained to me in some past in my youth was that these tales come out of an era you may have seen Grimm's tales and other old tales from Europe that talk about big claws and little claws. And they're tales in which some like big shot guy, too big for his breeches, gets had by, he's big claws, by little claws. You know, some guy, he's like smaller, he's poorer, but he's smart. And he gets this guy by means of wit and so on. And or there's Princess and the Pea, you know, the dried pea under 12 mattresses and various tales. Anyway, a theme that these elder, interesting academic friends of mine used to talk about was that those tales bespoke an era in which a kind of rights of smaller people, let's say the guilds, the smaller entrepreneurs, the smaller farmers were asserting their right to be deemed people, you know, equal people, people with rights, people with dignity, hedonists, as they say in Ukrainian. And so, by dint of them asserting their own dignity and rights, they would kind of outsmart some stuffed shirt. And so I don't know if this tale that Adam read to us bespeaks something like that, but I know that rereading Grimm's tales and others with that understanding is very helpful. And it's also an interesting story in Ukraine because Ukraine's a land, these great lands, very large, and farmers there producing very well, very like efficiently in a place where they don't have a native ruling class or a native aristocracy, particularly, and they're stuck with one place or another coming in. And as Professor Snyder says, there's got colonizers coming in and becoming landlords. But these people, they just keep on tilling the soil, producing terrific uh, output and asserting their rights to like sell at a fair price and be treated as human beings with dignity. And so, I mean, this one's so curious. Maybe he's one of these people who asserts his dignity, his upright his right to be deemed a person with dignity and rights. And I don't know that it's just a it's just a through line to the present day. But I agree with you, Adam. I think maybe it's a reason why you like the story and you always liked it and you sort of cherish it. So I have not read stuff that there vindicates all of that for me, but I like to hold on to that kind of theorizing about the sort of folk tale and why the people hold it dear. Back to you, if makes any sense to you at all.
No, absolutely. And I was looking through this PDF that I posted because it reminded me. So if you go to the first post in the nest, folks, it opens up a PDF. And if you scroll right to the bottom, there's an interesting cartoon of the three-headed Zmi. And one of its heads is Putin, and the other two heads are the Moscow chicken. And he has a bottle of vodka in his hand and a gas pipeline attached to his tail. So have a look at it. It's so nice being able to put whatever the heck we want in the nest, eh, Robin?
Hey, absolutely.
But I'm just going to read some excerpts. I thought I want to look up and see if this district or part of Kyiv is still named Kozyumyakivska or something like that.
Why don't I take a look while you're talking and see if I can
Yeah.
find it?
So, but this is really interesting because this PDF that I posted is more related to the serpent legend. So the Zmi, which is, there's a place in and around Kyiv called the Serpent's Shafts. This is an earthen fortification in central Ukraine, which is surrounded by legends and tales. Legends and tales tell about strongman Kirilo or Mikita Kozhumyaka, the leather wrinkler, who saved Kyiv from the serpent. That's the tale we just heard. So then they have a version of the tale in there, and then it is one of the many Kievan narratives where the serpent is present. Thus, there are legends in Kyiv Belena epic songs about the strong man Dobrenya Mychailo and Zmi Horenich, the serpent. The etymology of Horenich can be derived from Hori or mountains. So it's a mountain snake. Dobrenya lived in Kyiv and tried to get married. However, every beautiful girl he wanted to woo kept being taken by this darn Zmi. So that is another version of the tale that doesn't need a princess, I guess, Robin. And this was another interesting part. The fairy tale legend is widely known in Oblon district nowadays. Also, there is another version of it which says that a battle took place at Doroho Zechi and connects the story with Kirillivska Church. The urban version of the legend says it is rumors that the caves lead from the church to the southern outskirts of Kyiv to the area that is named Church, Tsarkovshchina. However, no one certainly knows about these underground passages, so it is unknown who created them, when and why, but the legend says that it is the same legendary Zmi Horenich who lived and still lives in these caves, and the cave is so deep that it leads to hell. Then there are several finals to the story. Some say the serpent was defeated by the Kozhumiaka, and others that no one could defeat him, and the hero only drove the villain far into the cave. And the third version says that the serpent still lives under the foundation of the Church of Saint Kirill, and that is the guy who created Cyrillic script.
Where is that church? I haven't heard of that.
So Kirillska Church in Kirillska Oblast. These gonna have to copy paste some of these churches. So I don't know its exact location.
Kirillska Oblast sounds, that must be a...
No, I read that wrong. Kyivska Oblast, and it's the Kirillska Tserkva.
Interesting, okay.
Ooh, that was all me. So there's legends. So legends might be legends, but with the establishment of Soviet power in the Kyiv, the Bolsheviks filled part of the foundation with concrete.
Of course.
Dirty tankies.
You know, it's really sort of odd. I just was reading an article by a speech by Timothy Snyder where he talks about, the fact that Russia really doesn't have much of a history without taking all of Ukraine's history. And at the same time, when they come in, what is the first thing they do? They try to destroy all of Ukrainian history, not even understanding that it's the stuff that they've tried to steal to start with. It's very odd.
Well, I mean, I even found that in the, I picked that PDF because I was like, oh man, I totally read this book when I was a kid. But reading the very beginning the wording in the very beginning was just casually Russophile, like it was in the days when there wasn't a prince in Kyiv. And it's like, you mean the days before you existed, you dirty, dirty Moscows.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting.
From the 80s, I think it might have even been published in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, it's probably. Yeah, and all of those anything that came out of pre-independent Ukraine, a lot of it did have to go through the it went through the lens of the Russians overlords, and also unfortunately a lot of people had been educated in Soviet schools, and I think there were plenty of people in Ukraine who had, even without intention, had picked up some of the Russian attitudes toward Ukrainian culture. I mean, thank God that's definitely been fixed in the last 30 some odd years. But I think at the time, I know some older Ukrainians who still struggle with some of that. And James, back to you.
Hey, That's interesting, and I read that same essay by Snyder. That was good. The thing I wanted to say was that that idea that Russia doesn't have a good sense of itself. When you look at what Russia's done and you write its history in your mind, you realize it's like, oh, this is not a good story to tell necessarily, right? Because it does not ennoble common people at all. It really doesn't. It doesn't even make Putin much of a great man either, as it works out for him, and nor a lot of the predecessors. None of them really go down in history as, I don't know, some of the leaders that we know and love in the West. So they really are sort of at a loss, because if they tell it honestly, it's like, oh, yuck. So yeah, they've got a problem there with that.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the points that Snyder makes in that short article, if anybody's got, I don't remember where you got it from, James. It might be something to throw up in the nest if you happen to have it, you know, easily available. But one of the things he points out is Russia's approach to the world is all about the past. They have no future. They have no projection of the future. They have no place they're trying to get to. It's all about what's happened in the past. And it's
It's all
odd
about
because
what they say happened in the past. So it's more pathetic than that. It's a doctored version of history that they're not even, and it's, sorry, Robin, but I'll just say it links to me, to Snyder's Road to Unfreedom and the Politics of Eternity, and where authoritarianisms have to create victimhoods, and stolen pasts kind of reminds me of something that starts with an M and ends with aga.
gee, I wonder what you're talking about. Yeah, no, it is true though. The even the past that they're hearkening back to never existed. It's it's a mess. I mean, I don't. It's sort of interesting because as I, as I was reading Snyder talking about this Russia they're trying to get back to a mythical past that never existed, whereas Ukraine has a very real past that they know existed, and Ukraine is resolutely focused on the future. Which of those two countries do you think has a better chance? It's it's sad because one of the points that Snyder makes also is that the Russians have destroyed any possibility of brotherhood between Ukrainians and Russians, and Russia has so much that they could have gained from learning from Ukraine.
I'm not
And it's
sad about that.
no, well, yeah, no, yeah, they can go pound sand at this point. I mean, the point isn't, that the point is that they have really done themselves in. They should have, if they had treated Ukraine as really as an older brother. When you come right down to it, Ukraine could have given them so much, and instead they tried to take Ukraine by force, and in the process are destroying themselves, which couldn't happen to a nicer bunch of people. James.
You said it. I really liked what you said about, great past, but we're looking to the future, and what a gift history gives us, right? To really let us know. It's like, whoops, that didn't work. Good thing we learned our lesson there. And I think to some extent, we can see the difference between our modern selves in the U.S. and us, I don't know, 50 years or more back and sort of on back before that, where denial of history much more often had a place in our conversations. And it did not help us go forward. And now I think, well, I hope we've learned some lessons from the last 50 years about especially in foreign policy, right? And so knowing what we actually did, remembering it, and understanding the consequences of what we did really helps us. Like any good science, history can really help you rule out some alternatives, or perhaps I should stick with hypotheses since I said science.
Yeah, thank you. James, go ahead. Yeah.
Then I realized I may have made a mash of that. So let me try again. If you know your history and you understand the consequences of it, then I think you're much more able to build a future that's going to work better, because you understand the pitfalls of the things that you did in the past. And so yeah, so and I'm loving futurism in the sense of like, how can we get better? And that's what Ukraine is doing right now. So I'm tying your book to the future.
That is a very good point. The only way you can learn from your past mistakes is if you realize what they are and figure out a way to not repeat them in the future. Russia is not doing any of that. Lexicon.
Well, I'm looking at some other stuff like from Gates of Europe of Plokhy, but also the first Ukrainian history I read was the Orest Subtelny. And when I've been trying to study Ukrainian, and so they've got one chapter of his book that you can find on Link Q. Um, anyway, it talks about because he starts so he's a guy who in 1988 publishes a history of Ukraine from the oldest times to what was current for him before, without knowing how all sorts of stuff, how the Soviet Union's going to fall apart. But so he's just writing Ukraine-centered history based on a geography and anthropology that one can find in the sources. And so he talks about how in Ukraine, they're developed over centuries, even millennia, like the centuries leading up to Kievan Rus, not Kievan Rus, but in the times leading up to it, you have a people that develops what he calls, I think, the richest agricultural centered state or polity. I guess he would just say a polity, a general word, in the European lands, which is centered around Kiev, but it's the steppe. So it's there's a word for it, the Pontic steppe. So it means the steppe north of the northern side of the Black Sea and north of Greece. The bridge, I think that Pontic steppe is. And so that's the area that for centuries, and we're talking ancient Greece, where that's pre-Roman times. So you've got a grain producing, very productive, I guess the highest level of extensive occidental agricultural production that's able to trade at a high level with Greece for its olives and so on, olive oil. Um, and so this exists for some centuries and is present in very ancient Greece history. So this is what, of course, are Ukrainian lands. That's the source of an old sort of Proto-Slavic tongue that's developing. This is centuries and centuries before anything happens in the Muscovite sort of marsh, Finno-Ugric Mongolian areas up north and east of there. And that evolves into Kievan Rus, but it's evolving on the basis of a very rich, productive agricultural heartland that's very European and is in communication with the other, what we learned in school, various European Charlemagne and those sorts of Frank and Gothic and Visigoths and all those folks, the Goths, the Ostrogoths, and the Visigoths, and the various Vikings, Nordics, who have you. But so those times that's an interesting chapter if you're doing Ukrainian studies and you're finding that one lesson that shows up, but it comes out of Orest Subtelny's history of Ukraine. So that's somebody writing history without knowledge of all the other relationships that it's going to have with the orcs. And it helps you see it when Plocky talks about the gates of Europe. It's a really different mindset. Ukraine, the gates of Europe, that with a relationship to the Mediterranean world. Um, I was thinking about that stuff today, working on the other stuff that you're going to go on to talk about. But if I need to get to the point, somebody just ask me. But
I have a
I
question.
was, yeah, please.
Does Professor Mychailo know about your relations with Otis before you met him?
Well, I think Orest maybe introduced me to his buddy Mychailo, so they were
Ooh,
all good.
drama.
Pretty kinky. But I assume that they have both gone on to a better world, so they're probably up there laughing at us now.
Yeah, that's it.
I
They
hope
have
so.
indeed.
Alrighty, Adam, it is already 20 minutes before the next hour, and we've got an hour and 20 minutes to do something with the book. So I am honestly, and I have to admit to everyone here, I don't quite remember where we stopped. It's been a rather tumultuous couple of weeks. I think we are in chapter 3. We are, I think it's barricading for the long term. Where, it's interesting, Adam. One of the things that I have been feeling more and more as I'm reading this book is we haven't gotten up to the massacres in February yet. And even though it's history, you know what's going to happen. I still have this feeling all the time of, gee, maybe somehow it's not going to. Like when you're reading a novel, like you don't know what's going to happen next. And I keep on thinking, it's sort of I don't know, it's very poignant to read some of this stuff and read the hopes that people had and read different things that happens, and you know what's going to be happening next. If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, it's like watching Titanic.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, exactly. And I do think that the Revolution of Dignity gave Ukraine and the world incredibly precious things, but at such high cost. And that's the part that really that hurts, to read again, to see, what Ukraine gave to get, to get to the and as I'm getting distracted because I'm getting alerts, rocket alerts in Kiev again. This is Ukraine is still sacrificing so much for its freedom, um, and we'll stick with them anyway. So let's, Adam. Should we try to sort of go give a review of what we've gotten to briefly? What do you think?
So I'm just looking through the notes, what date we're at. So barricades go up. Is this before New Year's, obviously, because that's the beginning, that's
I'm
December
sort
for
of,
violence.
it's like December 12th, December 11th. Maybe we should back up a little bit. In the outline from the last time on we could start somewhere around the fifth page. Resolve hardens, that part, if you think that makes sense. Sorry, guys, this is live radio. I mean, God forbid we should I should have talked about this before we got on. My apologies. It's
So
we're
where are we backing
yeah.
up to, like before chapter 3 or within chapter
No, this is within chapter 3. It's
3? Excellent.
okay. It's resolve hardens. This is coming. I'll just start in, and then you can. Do you have the outline stuff from last week, from last
Yep.
time? Okay,
Yeah,
good. Okay, good.
I'm just going to
So,
control F resolve here because I'm not seeing.
okay. Okay. Well, I will start blathering on when you got it. You can just break it. We're talking about, okay, the protests have started on the Maidan, of course, and as we know, originally, just to back up. Oh, I should mention up in the next you'll see the title of the book, but it's Ukraine's Maidan, Russia's War by Mychailo Wynnyckyj. Chronicle and analysis of the Revolution of Dignity. And if you're new to this or you don't remember, you can just go up in the nest and you'll see the name. Um, and as we know, the Revolution of Dignity started when the president at the time, Yanukovych, at the last minute refused to sign the association agreement with the European Union, which a lot of Ukrainians were unhappy with what was going on in this kleptocracy that Yanukovych was running, but they were holding on because he had promised to sign this association agreement, and they understood that once the association agreement had been signed, that Ukraine would be forced to clean up some of Yanukovych's mess, some of the corruption and everything, because that was required of to have closer association with the European Union. When this didn't happen, It was, I think, the final straw for a lot of people. They saw that Russia was trying to pull Ukraine back into its orbit, and people did not want to go there. I think the overwhelming majority of Ukrainians did not want to go there. I mean, you can see that with the percentages of people who voted for independence. It was very, very high percentage of people who did not want to be associated with Russia anymore. They hadn't changed their mind in the intervening years, obviously. But anyway, so
And
yeah.
the other part of the history that we should go back to, which is the very beginning of the chapter 3, Maidan becomes siege, is they were prepared to disperse peacefully as of November 20th, like it was sort of winding down. But then at 4 a.m. on the 20th of November 2013, 1,300 plus Berkut officers viciously attacked the 150 to 200 students demonstrators left. And that's what got Ukraine mobilized. And that's a big point that I think we have to hit on. So that was the last major date before we start in this Resolve Hardens subchapter, was November the 20th. Berkut tries to, like, last minute clear out the last of the university kids hanging out on Maidan. And the next day, all their parents, all their grandparents, all their cousins, all their friends from school, and everyone showed up on Maidan to tell them what for. So once again, like Huila always does, um, Yanukovych shot himself in the foot. Like, the thing was petering out, but he decided to hit that authoritarian button of beating the college kids. And Ukrainians said no and perpetrated something that might have not have happened otherwise. What do you think about it, Lexicon?
Well, I think it's stunning. It's like all the other post-Soviet spaces that we look at, the cops show up, the special Berkut, whatever they are, armed police forces show up and beat people's heads in, and they all say, "Oh my God, what can we do?" But in Ukraine, I mean, in Ukraine, people are absolutely aghast. They are absolutely enraged. They say, "Hey, you don't do this to my children." It's just, and as he says repeatedly in the book, in all the past 30 years of independence, like, we've seen other places, I'm not talking about the Baltics because they stood up similarly, but, I mean, there's a lot of places, well, the parts that were roped into the USSR, where the, Ruskies, the orcs could rule the roost, and you could beat people into submission, and that's just the way it was, and although in the West, the media didn't really understand this, these Ukrainian people over these 30 years have been diverging in their path. They have been formulating their idea of who they are, but I think long before then, they've had a concept of who they are. And this bullshit, you come out and beat our children, you've got clubs, they've got nothing. They're there in their mittens and you're beating their heads in, and, by God, no pasaran, this just is not gonna happen, and so the way that, because the stuff that happens the next day, this demonstration that was a few thousand people, a few scores of thousands, this is maybe the biggest of the whole history of Maidan. This is the one that nobody knows if it was 500,000, 1,000,000 people. The aerial photography of this is just stunning. The whole world kind of said, "Oh, Ukraine, where is this place?" Because and the later on maps that Wynnyckyj gives you are like the maps of that period. They filled up the whole open spaces, but all the streets, the corridors leading in, it happened so fast. It was so massive, and when he says that in all the 30 years of independence, this hadn't happened before, you say, "Oh, really?" 'Cause your understanding of what went on even outside the USSR, Hungary and, Czechoslovakia, you knew and Poland, the people stood up and rebelled, they sent the army in, they beat everybody up, and the people had to back down, and what these guys are saying is, "No, not here," and I think it's something special in Ukraine. Like, "You don't
Yeah,
do this to us." And the whole rest of the chapter, well, this in chapter 4 is, um, is the way Yanukovych is afraid to, like, call out his goons fully, because the whole time he doesn't know what'll happen if he really does this. And, that's one part of the story that I draw from out of this. But, yeah, I'll go back to you guys for
that's
other stuff
thank you.
Great,
for
great
your
points.
own language.
It reminds me, Adam, of a meme I saw recently, and it shows it's Yanukovych talking to Putin, and he's saying to him, "Listen, I know these people. You're screwed." It's yeah, you don't. I mean, one of the things that's come back again and again in the story is the misunderstanding that people outside of Ukraine have had of Ukrainian motivations and Ukrainian willingness to stand. Ukrainians, I think, as a character trait and as a culture, are very able to keep going in difficult times, to put their heads down and work and wait for a better, wait for a time that things will be better. But once pushed, and once it goes too far, then you've awakened the giant, and you're really going to be in trouble. And I think we see that in a lot of the story of what happened during the Maidan, and we see now these 3 day, well, they're going to take Kiev in 3 days, right? 3 years, almost 3 years later, I don't see any Russian troops in Kiev, and there's not a chance in hell they're going to get there either. Um, so that misunderstand Ukraine at your own peril if you're an enemy of Ukraine is what I would say.
What I think Marcy Shore in the last book did a pretty good, and I think Wynnyckyj's going to get into it in the second half because, as we know, the first half of the book is, as Lexicon called it, a blow by blow of the revolution in the early days of the war, and the second half is more of a sociological, political sort of um, deep dive into what was going on, and I think he'll get more into it. But one of the things that Marcy expressed in that book through some of the people that she was, writing through their perspective, um, was that, revolution on granite, independence in 91, Orange Revolution, and I think it was that, and I'm just speaking for all Ukrainians here, but let's just speak like sociology professors for a minute. Please bear with me. But there, there was this in the middle-aged population, and this, what Wynnyckyj calls this bourgeoisie, this successful middle class, upper middle class people in Ukraine who did participate in the Orange Revolution, saw things get get overtaken, petered out, destroyed. And so when the kids got beaten, I think their parents and aunties and uncles and grandparents who had been part of Orange Revolution and its eventual failure said no, like this is, we draw the line here, and it's amazing point for me because it's sort of like this undescribable point in a community where something happens and it changes everything in the very same way for so many people, and there's this mass reaction without thinking about it or planning it or discussing it. It just happens, and it's, yeah, I'm just blabbering on now, but it's a beautiful thing. Go ahead, Lexicon.
Well, a few months later, after it all happened, but in 2014 in the spring when I met people, they said, after this, like when all our uncles came out and they're talking about their uncles, they mean that people who were war veterans from, they were in the, Soviet armed forces in Afghanistan and stuff, and so they came and they said, "No, okay, you wanna build a barricade, this is the way you actually build barricades." Just remember this woman telling me about how they started learning how to do it properly from then on, because it's like, so as you're saying, it's a hardening of resolve, and they're starting to, first, like, it could be a student's lark and stuff, and yeah, the young people, they all want to have best visa. They want to have visa-free travel to Europe, and they want to study and work and go on a great weekend to Europe and everything. But this stuff is starting to be important for all the people, and this is when their mothers and fathers and their uncles, the people who know, if you're serious about fighting, let's get serious about fighting. And in the book, he talks about them starting to build barricades in a more serious fashion. It's in a more professional, um, uh, knowing fashion. So there are people of older generations saying, "Okay, we have to fight these bastards. And so if you want to do that, you need to know how to do that." And so an awful lot of stuff, that's what I understood anyway from talking to these people that I met in the spring of that year of 2014, after, all was won, and but the war had started, telling me how that older generation came and talked to them about how to get serious. It's quite thrilling to listen to, but yeah, it just grounded me in how serious all this was. But there was real knowledge present in that population, and they shared it across
And
generations.
yeah, and there was such solidarity too. I mean, you're talking about the people, the older and younger generation, which is we see traditionally tend to be opposed. They were united. The Russian-speaking East and the Ukrainian-speaking West, people of different ethnic backgrounds, all of that. They even talk about the upwardly mobile entrepreneur type from Kiev is talking to the the sheep herder from someplace in the Carpathians, that everybody came together and pooled their talents, and people became leaders in the areas they were most able to, where they were most able to help. It's really and I think Ukraine has benefited from that to this day. The ability to give people who have the requisite um, talents and abilities, put them in positions where they can do the most good. I mean, there's a lot to be done still, but that recognition of that we're all in this together was a very important thing. I think that's something, Adam, that all of us here at Volya Radio have felt in the last week too, about pulling together and everyone doing what they can, and what a wonderful community built. The way a community can come together and accomplish great things pretty quickly. Um, anyway, back to you, Adam.
Absolutely. Parallel ideas, but they were, of course, doing it under, um,
Yeah, different
existential
conditions. Yes.
conditions. Yeah. Um, so we just enjoy comparing ourselves to Ukrainians, guys, because they're so awesome, and we're just trying to be a little bit that awesome.
Yeah,
Take
exactly.
us with a grain of salt.
Well,
Go
I don't know
ahead,
if I'd
James.
mentioned this on air, but I checked my DNA report recently, and it turns out I'm almost 20% Slavic, and they placed the Slavic group I'm from in Ukraine, so I was really chuffed to find that one out. So, Adam, maybe we're related.
I
Over to you,
knew it.
James.
I knew it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, James.
I have no idea. I think I'm like a what is that? Yeah, the 59 or 69, or what is that number? Yeah. Anyway, I'm just a variety. I don't know what I am, but Indian, and I know there's some black and a couple other
Heinz
peoples.
57.
Thanks, Heinz. Thanks, man. That's the one. Nothing to do with 69. All right. Anyway, yeah, but never mind about that, because what I really wanted to say was that the context of this kind of existential threat acts like 10 billion pounds, and it pushes down on the society, and out comes diamonds in the best of times. And this is sort of what happened in Ukraine. That all that pressure from outside really did force them together, because they realized that whatever problems they had with each other, it was much less than the problems they had with Russia. And so that is a brilliant way to get a country together. It's a horrible way too, right? Because it's war essentially. And or in this at this stage, it's something a little different than war, hybrid war, I guess you could say. But how do we get that? Can we go back to that, Robin? I mean, how do we get that in the U.S.?
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking as you were talking, both Russia and Ukraine have have an an enemy that is supposed to cause unity. In the case of Ukraine, they have a very real enemy, and the unity is necessary to preserve you preserve the country and the culture and everything. The Russians make up fake enemies, and that's supposed to provide unity inside the country, which it doesn't to anywhere near the same extent. It's sort of interesting, but yeah, this is a problem that I know. I mean, Ukraine will face, God willing, someday too. Is when they have peace and they're not under threat. That's when you have to figure out new ways to stay unified. I hope that they get a chance to try to figure that out very soon. Okay. Anyway, Adam,
It's
shall
good
we?
stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um, okay.
Are we
Let's
back at
try to.
December 6th?
Yeah. I think we
Resolve
should at
Hardens?
least try to get to the end of chapter 3 before we get they take out the cane and pull us off the stage here. Yeah. Resolve hardens. We are at Friday, December 6th. Well, when
Oh,
there's an
who's
order
coming
for.
up after us?
Well,
Oh,
that's true. Well, we're not. Yeah, I know
yeah.
exactly. Well, not yet. By the way, folks, we do hope to have a bigger schedule than we have at the moment. We're doing 3 2-hour slots a day. This is just many people are really need some time, with everything that's gone on. So we're starting with this something sustainable, and we are certainly looking to the future, doing more extensive broadcasting, just so everybody knows. Keep your eyes on the Volya Radio Twitter account, and things will be announced as we progress. It's still very early days. We only got this thing up and running a couple of days ago. Jeez, it's amazing. Anyway, okay. So resolve hardens. Friday, December 6th, there was an order for demonstrators to clear City Hall. Yanukovych has a meeting in Sochi with Hilo, as Adam calls him, and signs this. Apparently, I don't think they knew at the time, but Yanukovych signed an agreement that Ukraine was going to enter the Eurasian Economic Union and later the Custom Union with Russia. This is Putin's uh, supposed competition for the EU, and that would make, in an attempt to make it impossible for Ukraine to become closer to the EU. At this point, though, the
We promise that
demonstrators,
all citizens will have toilets by 2075.
yeah, and running water 20 years thereafter, but you can have a toilet. Yeah, anyway, I'm not. I was about to digress again, but I won't. But anyway, at this point, the demonstrators on the Maidan realized that there was no possibility of compromise with the Yanukovych regime, um, and the population mobilizes. By December 8th, 2 days later, 2 days after this meeting, uh, there were between 500,000 and 1 million people in the city center. And also, there were paid anti-Maidan protesters who showed up too, of course, because there had to be that. There's still no, there was, at this point, it was hard to know what was going to happen because there was really no plan in the Maidan going forward about how things were supposed to progress. And the message from the opposition leaders was just to wait, which is not a really good plan with more people arriving every day, and with the Berkut and the riot police and Interior Ministry Special Forces getting beefed up also. And in all of that, the first significant snow of winter falls in Kiev. But we have some hands, I guess. So Nicolette, welcome. What would you like to add?
Thank you. And first of all, I'd like to say I'm so glad I found you all.
Well, we're glad you found us too.
Cleaning out of people who didn't follow me back from, it's been enough time. Um, but I mean, when you're on your third account, and I've recovered well now, but because my brother was Nick Napo,
Okay, I place you
it's
now. Well, I'm glad you're here.
it's always yeah, and it's always an interesting ride, and there are always bumps in the road. And, we eventually find out. If we don't find the way, we eventually find the way. And some people or organizations disappoint us, so we just find new ones that don't. So, and thank you all for participating and understand it's really hard to rebuild and everything else. And just say, love you and support Ukraine and Slava Ukraini.
Heroyam Slava. Thank you so much, and I hope we'll be seeing a lot more of you. Thanks for coming up, Lexicon.
Yeah, it's really interesting in this part in chapter 3 and chapter 4. You start to see what Putin gets up to, and like Yanukovych goes and visits him. It's always secret flights to Sochi or into Moscow or to wherever he goes, and he signs these secret pacts and so on. I mean, it's like you just get increasingly clear as we look at it from today and knowing all that then went on, how completely off the track, like Hoylo, Putin just does not know what he's dealing with. And the other stuff we know, his essays that he writes later on, usually in 2021, talking his concepts of how he's going to be Peter the Great again, and he's going to gather in the lands, and the whole idea that the empire can't be the empire without Ukraine, but that at the same time as it's so essential because that's his origin story, it's still like these are a bunch of country bumpkins, and he can do secret deals with these clodhoppers like Yanukovych, uh, that he gets rid of later on when they're no use to, when they don't perform. But it's the whole thing is just an exercise in the man is a massive ignoramus vis-a-vis an entire population, 50 million people that he does not understand at all, that he has um, enabled himself to have a fake story about throughout his life. And at any rate, the various secret deals that Yanukovych signs with him and the efforts he makes at directing, okay, how you'd better deal with this young man are laughable. But so it's a nice period in which we can see, and I wish that more so-called, Russia experts could have seen, but didn't, but failed to see how hopeless their strategy on Ukraine was. It's too bad that everybody tolerated this hopelessness because an awful lot of people have died for all these errors. But at any rate, this is a real exercise in futility that we're seeing going on now in this chapter and in the next chapter. Back to you.
Absolutely. And I think a theme of everything we see that happens on Maidan in the early part of the war in this book is, and then correlates to me with a major theme that I've seen since February 2022 is everybody fucking underestimates Ukrainian people, Ukrainian community, Ukrainian polity all the time. And we still do it. We still have to like retrain our minds from this great Russia, Soviet power, bull crap that lots of us grew up steeped in, like not steeped in, you know what I mean. It was part of the zeitgeist, and yeah, step after step, Ukrainians surprise us. They shouldn't, and that's why we're trying to do book clubs and learn everything we can about this amazing community that, like my friend James said, is becoming a diamond under all this pressure. Go ahead, James.
So you make a really good case for the foolishness of Putin. And I just want to point out that how, first of all, the turning point, this is a Netflix series, The Bomb and the Cold War. It is really, truly a story about this foolish war of Ukraine. It takes a long time getting there, but it sets all of the prehistory you need to know to really fully understand what happened. And at the very end of the series, they go through all the reasons why what Russia did was so strategically stupid. They just completely missed the boat, and they made the point about how lowered Russia is. Even though you could say, well, they're still taking land, so they're winning. Well, they gave up some land to China. Guess what? They're probably going to give up more land to China just to try to get back Ukraine. And they're going to really lose a lot more than they ever thought they could have lost in this. So, good points. Anyways, and by the way, that's an excellent
Finland
series.
and
Everybody,
Sweden and NATO.
what? Yeah, all that stuff. Yes.
The loss of the Black Sea Fleet.
Yeah, yeah, isn't that? Yeah, and there's nothing left at this point. There's nothing in the Black Sea anymore. I saw that they've moved the last little bit there. They're hiding in Novorossiysk. It's really yeah, it's pathetic. It's and as James was saying, as you were saying, Adam, it all comes from this this lack in this devaluing of Ukrainians. I had this discussion with this guy the other day, who as somebody I know, pretty well. I think of him as an immoral person, as an intelligent person. He was going on this thing about, he first started, he said, well, I said I'd been in Ukraine. Why did you go to Ukraine? I said, oh, it's a wonderful place. I mean, whatever. He said, oh, they're all anti-Semites. I said, well, they have the lowest anti-Semitism, percentages in all of Europe, actually. Oh well, they'll never win. I see. I mean, it's like they flip one thing. Yeah, they flip for these arguments when they can't get to one thing. They try to flip to something else. Well, they can't win. I said, they can't win. It's almost 3 years. They drove Russia back out of Kyiv and out of most of the area that Russia tried to take over, and they've lost part of Russia to Ukraine now. So, and they haven't managed to mount any kind of a response to that. So, well, and then he goes on to something else, and then he had a phone call. He had to answer his phone, although it hadn't rung, which I thought was sort of interesting. But but I bring this all up because all of that was through the Russian lens that many people in the entire world have taken up without realizing what they're doing. Because if you got rid of all of your preconceptions and just looked at Ukraine and looked at how things are going, you would not have any of these attitudes. But it's the Slavic studies departments that have also highly Russified. It's this confusion between Soviet and Russian, which is still people still don't understand the difference between the two. But
What's funny
until
is that
yeah.
used to really bother me when I was younger because I wanted people to understand that it wasn't just Russia. But now with all that's happened, I'm okay with it. You can confuse the Soviet, you can confuse those dirty tankies with the Russian Federation anytime you want. I'm good with it. Go ahead, Lexicon.
Yeah, no, it's true. It works for me. Yeah, let Russia take all the negative stuff on itself. That's absolutely great. Yeah. Anywho, okay, lexicon, and then we have to get at least. I want to get at least. I'm hoping to get to the end of chapter 3 this week.
But
We're not going to touch chapter 4. Go ahead.
Okay, well,
It's
we're still
okay.
germane to this blow by blow because we're looking at the whole how the world is viewing this stuff. Because this series that you're talking about, James and Adam on Netflix, this Turning Point, it's been around for a few months, and at first I thought, oh yeah, well here's somebody who wants people to really look at the capacity, the excellent abilities of the Ukrainians to fight back. But the leitmotif through all of this is how the nuclear stuff gets more and more humongous as we go through it. It just increases geometrically. It gets like super scary. And in the end, when I weigh why the hell did they present this series, one of the things that I feel like, to me, this goes right along with the Russia-centric mindset that they want us in, which is that it is indeed terrible, the nuclear sort of scary environment in which we live, and this all could go sideways so rapidly, and this could be a really big mess for humanity if it goes wrong. Well, and it's not as if they present like it would go wrong if we don't give Ukraine everything it needs to hold back, maintain the dike and stave off these hordes. That's not exactly what they're doing. So I just feel like there's a lot of great stuff there. I appreciate it. It's good to know about it. But I think that the scare tactic of that series is a big part of its raison d'être. And ultimately, I just want to say, like, it's worth being wise to ask some questions about what that series is there for. And in any case, ultimately, like us, we in the end, what do we want to be able to say? And we want to say, yeah, that could be terribly scary, but in fact, Ukraine has ways to stop this, and Ukraine's allied powers have ways to see through this clearly and to deal with it very directly. And I wish that message were clearer. Anyway, I don't think that message is clear in this series. And I do fault it for that part. But anyway, like, carry on and let's do 3 and 4 because it's a terrific read.
Thanks, Lexicon. Let's go to James first. Honestly, I was pushing to get the end of the chapter, but this is our first week back. I think we're gonna do
Yeah.
what we're gonna do, and that's it. We don't
Oh,
have to be too. Anyway, go ahead, James.
Yeah, yeah. We do want you to get through the book. No, I so appreciate that you said that lexicon because I
I just
watched
want
the
to hang
last.
out with you guys longer, though.
Well, there's that. Maybe the host can just, well, the last one to leave can kick everybody out so nobody posts anything else. And then you guys can go off, do what you want. And yeah, anyway, you can stay as long
I'm
as you want. So,
I'm gonna
anyway.
have I'm gonna have a chat with the powers that be for that should get us 3 hours for next week. But anyway, go ahead.
No, what I wanted to say about this is first, I believe you are correct, Lexicon, about that. And therefore, they must be working, whoever made that show must be working with the Pope, who says it's now a sin to own nuclear weapons, but without really stating the case about the fact that these things, when they're out of balance, when there's no deterrence to somebody who's got it, then there is a much worse fate for humanity than for us to have nuclear weapons. And so, John Paul II, for example, said, oh, now, of course, we need them for deterrence until such time as we can negotiate everybody to get rid of all their nukes, which okay, I'm betting it will not be in my lifetime. It will not even be in the next 50 years that we do that. It just isn't going to happen. And so, like the cluster bombs that we realized are so handy, yeah, these nukes are here to stay. And so, I'm glad you said it because I thought about it a lot and I thought this is, yeah. But I think this audience at least has heard the arguments a lot about the nuclear scare tactics. So I guess I didn't I didn't think of it immediately as the main point. What I do find amazing is just how much work has gone into the production quality and especially the translation. And I think it's an accurate translation. And also, they've timed the speakers who are doing the translation to the movements of the mouths of the people speaking excellently. So it really is high production quality, and it brings in rare bits of history that honestly I think do really tie together so many points that are important for us to understand as background to maybe it's a little bit more Russian centric than it is Ukrainian centric, but when you see Plohe in episode one and see him a couple more times, and you see Zelensky, he, I think, may be the first one to call it a genocide after looking at evidence, at least. So it's a beautiful series. But so good to warn people about the overall theme. And there is something to be said about getting rid of nukes, but not without them going first, essentially, because Russia with nukes and us without is a horrible, horrible combination.
And I
You know,
would
it's
add
it's
the escalatory factor of, if the Russian Federation gets away with this, well, then everyone's going to want nukes, because that's the only way to protect yourself in that world. Go ahead, Linda.
yeah, that's absolutely. Actually, just hang on just a second, please, James. Could you just give us the name of that series and where you're seeing it again, and then we'll go right to Linda.
On Netflix, there is a series called Breaking Point. Now, Breaking Point is the name of like a little production
Turning point.
company. Turning Point. I keep confusing it. Because there's a great Breaking Point movie that is about Ukraine. Anyways,
Isn't
Turning
Turning Point
Point.
the Nazi guy with the tiny face?
What? No. Anyways, the title is
The
Turning
Turk
Point.
guy?
Thank you, James. Adam,
No, Turning Point, the bomb
this
in the Cold War is the rest of the title there, because there's multiple Turning Point stories out there that are on Netflix. So yeah.
okay, thanks, James. Linda, finally over to you. Sorry.
I'm hearing this discussion, and I just had to chime in with my own unbiased opinion. And that is, and this is from a peacenik. um, and that is that unless and until there is a humans version 2.2 or society version 3.0, there will be a need uh, to protect ourselves from a WHOLERY. Unfortunately, that's a need. So, um, so maybe we'll get beyond that, but right now, it's not going to be in my lifetime. So anyway, my thoughts. Thanks.
Thanks, Linda. Strategic Jane, over to you.
Hi, I'm just gonna say one thing here. I've heard a discussion about, a world with or without nukes. Realize that there will be weapons, and the United States is not in a position right now because of what Russia and China are up to really do much to our nuclear stockpile other than take care of it and make sure it's maintained. There's a lot of reasons for that are technical, but understand that it's the ultimate hold card that we have, that gives us a great deal of power to deal with other nations and to keep Russia in their box. And while I wouldn't say Ukraine has been a great demonstration of that fact, it surely has been a demonstration of the fact that we've been able to keep them from going over the top. And like I said, this is a long conversation, but unfortunately, for a number of technical reasons, I don't think you're going to see this happen, guys. Just as a thing from a nuclear non-pro person. Anyway, thanks.
No, I think it's right. I don't think there's anyone who doesn't think that it would be better if nukes had never come into existence. But at this point, they're a necessary thing, and certainly Ukraine has learned what it's like to give up your nukes without ironclad guarantees of support from the people who signed some stupid memorandum with you. So,
Well,
yeah, go ahead, Adam.
once we've invented warp engines and reduce and replicators and stuff that reduce all possible resource um, um, deficiencies, then our great grandkids can use the nukes to mine Neptune. But until then, we got to watch out for bad actors. Go ahead, Strategic Jane.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The other thing I was going to mention is there are a number of near nuclear or potentially already there countries out there, the N countries, but and they are far more politically unstable. So there's a lot of, like you said, bad actors out there, and it just makes things an uncomfortable
Iran and
mess.
Pakistan pointing missiles at each other.
Yeah, well, that's been going on for a bit, but it's North
But it's part of the
Korea.
fabric, right?
Yeah, it's all part of this large deal, and unfortunately, I hope that Russia does not consider doing anything unreasonable towards these structures of nuke plants like Zaporizhia that they have control of right now. It would be unwise for them to do it, and ultimately, it's their neighborhood, so it would be unproductive. They will get any blowback from what happens there, so don't take the Zaporizhia threats too seriously right now.
Well, when I'm looking at the total erasure of my people and culture as an option, then you know, it's like that one of those first NAFO memes. Nuclear winter is is a small price to play for the destruction of Moscovia. I'm just kidding, of course, guys. Robin, stop me.
Okay, stop. Okay, we're going to go back to December 10th here, 2013, um, uh, where the tensions are continuing to escalate. We're back in the revolution of dignity, folks. People, for anyone who's lost track. Um, Foreign visitors show up from the EU and the United States and the Duma, in the United States and the Duma. And Medvedev calls the fact that these foreign people have come to try to help defuse the situation. He complains that it's intervention in the internal affairs of Ukraine, which I think is just, I mean, is pretty darn rich, considering that's what exactly what Russia has been doing ever since Ukraine became independent. But they want to have a free field to do whatever they want. And when the EU and the US comes in, that's intervention in internal affairs. They These foreign leaders try to convince Yanukovych to defuse the situation unsuccessfully. I assume he was probably under massive pressure from Putin at this point. And December 11th, which I think was when they were still, when these representatives were still in country, the riot police are ordered to clear the Maidan barricades. Vitaly and Volodymyr Klitschko, the now present mayor of Kiev, and his brother, who are both world champion boxers, they try to negotiate with the police commanders, and it's actually a delaying tactic. While they're doing this, thousands of people arrive have been called and told to get to the Maidan as quickly as possible. They arrive to defend the Maidan. This is when that iconic moment when the monk in the Mychailo monastery begins to ring the bells and alarm, the bells that have not been rung in alarm since the Mongol invasions many centuries earlier. And then at sunrise, very suddenly the Berkut just withdraws. They had been within 40 meters of taking the stage, which was in on the Maidan. The stage was really the center of everything. Um, they also attempted to storm City Hall and were blocked by protesters and forced to retreat. By 10:07 in the morning, the troops had withdrawn. And this, some of this stuff, it just, I don't know, I almost feel like a mystical hand involved. I mean, think about that. They at that point they were within 40 meters of basically destroying everything, and for some reason they blinked. This happened several times in the history of the Maidan. Unfortunately, a lot of people died in the meantime, but there were several times when, well, the first time that Adam talked about earlier, when when people had realized that the time had passed, that they were not going to get the EU association agreement signed, that people were getting ready to pack up and go home because they felt they had lost, and then Yanukovych attacked them, and that revitalized things again. And now in this case, where they were close to destroying it, and they pulled back for some unknown reason. Um, that at this point, the next section is called the foreign factor, and their reaction to the attempted clearing of the Maidan was, was also I think put Yanukovych on his heels a little bit. Victoria Nuland showed up with her cookies, if you remember. I just think that's so cute. Victoria Nuland was she was the ambassador to the Ukraine from the United States, I think, right, Adam? Do I have that right? Or national
Well,
security
yeah,
advisor, maybe?
basically the
A
controller of the
deputy.
coup because she gave them those cookies from the biolabs that made them NATO superhumans.
Ah, that's
And
right. The
that's why
soul
they were
cyborgs.
able to defeat all the riot
Tim
officers with
Snyder
nothing but
says, if
garbage
you think
cans. And Lexicon, please, I'm telling it like it is. Don't interrupt. No, go ahead, Lexicon.
Okay, Lexicon, tell us how it is now.
Tell it how it
well,
really is. That was misinformation, folks.
because I love Snyder, because Snyder absolutely announces definitively. He states uh, that if you think she gave cookies, you were reading the Russian side because she actually had sandwiches. So, what do you believe? Except that I see in Wynnyckyj's account that he thinks she gave out cookies. Who knows what the hell? I guess we better ask her, but who'll ever know. But no, it's like just too droll. I mean, all of these um movers and shakers who show up and decide to tell these Ukrainian clodhoppers how it's going to be. They're going to work things out, and we should indeed be so grateful. You should indeed be so grateful for our intervention. I mean, they still have these outfits in Kiev. They've got this democratic institute, which has been around for decades, and they have all of these and the Russians, of course, had their outfits. And well, it's fun. I like to look at, for example, one group that I see that I can stream on YouTube, which is called Ukraine Toronto Television. They're so funny. It has nothing to do with Toronto. They just like the name. And this young woman and this young man, and they tell you about what they're pissed off about at the actual moment. Anyway, watching stuff like that gets generated out of Ukraine, they're just so annoyed. Like, they're kind of annoyed with the diaspora, except they know, okay, the diaspora, they're good people after all that do support us. And then everybody else who gives us grief. I just think it's really important to find these voices out of Ukraine who tell you how they see all these attempts at intervention, because there is just more BS per square inch than you could have ever imagined, and you're never going to find out. Well, I don't know. What's your view? Do you want to know what was really going? What was really going on? It's what was going on is what Ukrainian people think was going on down at that square, or what a whole lot of other accounts tell you. So, what I'm just going to see in this chapter and chapter 4, which I was reading today, is to me the laughable initiatives of not only the outsiders, but the Ukrainian traditional opposition elites. To me, you've got a whole account. It's like Chaucer's Tales. You might as well be seeing Zelensky's Servant of the People production when he goes on and produces his three series. Um, yeah, the seasons 1, 2, and 3, Servant of the People. It's the laughable interventions of all of these highfalutin elites that are that are dealing with the rather obnoxious and messy people, and they all have anyway. They just are on a merry-go-round of skimming off the bonuses or the benefits of whatever popular activity is going on. I think that chapter 4 that we're going to look at really shows us when we see the series Servant of the People, what they're talking about is what happened leading up to Maidan and after, and how the same elites just cycle through. They come up with all their responses to what people are angry about, all their solutions, all their non-solution solutions, and like, honestly, believe us, guys. And so I think that, yeah, that series is a really fascinating insight into the believe us, guys crap that the elites tried selling Ukrainian people for several decades after Ukrainian independence, up to the big
Yeah.
change.
Yeah, thanks, Lexicon. Yeah, it is rather remarkable that even inside of Ukraine, the movers and the shakers, a lot of them misread what was going on. I don't know what the reason is for that, but it did. Adam, any thoughts before we continue?
No, go ahead.
Okay, all right. Okay, so we've got the Maidan being strengthened by a lot of people coming in, and also the anti-Maidan. They started busing in people from Donetsk, mostly from the east, from Yanukovych's, his base of support. Um, Many of them were demonstrators. Of the demonstrators were there under threat of losing their jobs if they didn't get on the bus and go to Kiev. Um, a lot of them, I mean, there's some funny stories they tell about them, about these people not really knowing what the heck they were there for, other than they're collecting some money or they're not losing their jobs. Uh, they 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 they. Uh, some of the things that they had been told was that the visa-free arrangement of the EU would mean that Ukraine had to legalize gay marriage. uh, People in the Euromaidan, in the anti rallies, were chanting Putin, Putin until somebody shut them down. So they're really clueless. And then the funniest thing that I just love this, and this was Okan Elzy, my favorite Ukrainian pop group, who's been around for years. They had a concert, with on the Maidan, and they made sure to leave seats for the anti-Maidan protesters too. So at the end of all of this, they all ended up, all these anti-Maidan types ended up with their supposed opponents all sitting down and listening to a concert together, which shows you, I mean, how foolish the whole thing was, because the motivation and the morale and everything were all on the side of the people, pro-Maidan protesters, and to bus in these people who didn't want to be there and had no ideological interest in what they were supposedly standing for. If anything, I think made the regime look even more foolish and weaker. So the next section is barricading for the long term. Um, as somebody mentioned before, I don't remember who at this point, sorry, that, after the failed attempt to clear the Maidan on the 11th of December, they got serious about the barricades. They had people there who could do metal work, who made metal frames. They filled bags of snow and poured water on top of it to harden them. They made really serious barricades. And in the article from Euromaidan Press that Adam put up in the Nest, there's some amazing pictures of all of that. This is an absolutely wonderful article, which was published in, what was it? It was published before, this was January 2014 originally. So you can see contemporaneous pictures of what was going on. It's really, if anyone who's actually been to Kyiv, it really hits you to see places that you recognize that were parts of the protests then. Anyway, okay, so they're building building serious barricades at this point. This was when the real civil society really went into high gear. They made arrangements for lodging because many people had come from outside of Kyiv. Soup kitchens were set up, first aid stations, firewood stores in anticipation of a long-term encampment. A local polypropylene manufacturer donated 20,000 thermal mattresses, and Ukraine is
How
not a rich country.
bougie.
Yes, right. Yeah. Well, I wonder if they were. I wonder if they had magnets in them. Never mind.
It was a bougie.
I can't.
They probably had
Yes.
like USB connectors to charge your phone because it was a bougie coup to cookie.
Yeah. No. Yeah, exactly. I mean, considering how advanced Ukraine is in IT things, almost possible, but I don't think so. This is 2014 after all. Okay, so in terms of
But
of
I had a
yes.
little note here. Uh, this shows that the entrepreneurs of Ukraine, um, and Kiev in particular, were all in on what I'm going to call from now on the coup de cookie, just to make it as misinformation-y as possible. No, they were all in on Maidan, to the point of donating, large businesses donating all of this stuff. And it's almost as if, entrepreneurs and honest business people want to operate under lawful consistency. And if that's a coup, then LFG. Go ahead, Robin.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that was one of the few, one of the few um, uh, protests in between the Orange Revolution and the Revolution of Dignity was a protest of by small business owners who were being driven to not be able to operate lawfully because of draconian tax measures, which of course meant you had to pay somebody off instead of actually abiding by the law. And they did manage to get a law turned back, as I remember. But yeah, oddly enough, business people are happier to operate when in a legal setup where they know what the rules are. Yeah. Anyway, so in terms of there were many people at this point coming in from outside of Kyiv, the Ukrainian Catholic Cathedral on the left bank, and thousands of private Kyiv residents provided places for people to stay who were arriving from all over Ukraine. At this point, the demographics has changed on the Maidan. Originally, about 50% of people on the Maidan were from Kyiv. At this point now, 81% were from outside of Kyiv. And the role of Kyiv residents switched from manning the camp to supporting it. The Open University of Maidan was also founded with lectures from prominent professors of Kyiv Mychailo Academy, Kyiv School of Economics, and Kyiv National University. This this shows the population that was on the Maidan. They were educated upwardly educated people who wanted to learn and who were trying to progress in life. And this I found really touching in a way, that in the midst of this revolution, that there was a real call for a real need for education and it was filled. ADMA, the Kiev Mohyla Academy and Kiev School of Economics are well, Kiev National University. I mean, these are major league places, and people, professors came from those places to deliver lectures on the Maidan. Pretty amazing.
Absolutely amazing, and it shows the cohesiveness of that horizontal culture that they created. And here we got they had a daycare, they had a school, they had a couple of churches. Like, it was just all there to be sustainable as a community, as a society. Like, it was almost like a microcosm of here's what we can do even while the riot police are coming at us, instead, as opposed to whatever the heck you oligarchs and are doing with your private giraffe zoos and all of that crap, you gaudy weirdos. Sorry. Oh, got off track. Anyways, my tangent is complete. But it was
Sorry,
the
and I'm talking
revolution
to a
of the
closed mark.
evolution, that we're seeing here, and how Ukrainians always surprise us in all of these ways. And even when you dive deep down into it, little details like this. Oh yeah, there was a university on Maidan. I wonder how many credits I could have got if you were able to. Well, I attended all of those lectures, professor, so hand over 3 credits.
Yeah, I did read one point though that they told the professors to try not to deliver the heaviest lectures. So it was probably a limit. But anyway, just let's kind of give me just a sec to mention this, and then I'm going to go right to you. At this point, things had to change on the Maidan a little bit because it needed to transform from an encampment to a national movement. There was a formation of the Maidan Council, which was really more of a horizontal discussion forum than an actual leadership. But it was necessary to get beyond, a loose bunch of people demonstrating, to establish some kind of structure. Although the institutionalized hierarchy was definitely not on the agenda. Lexicon, over to you.
Yeah, well, all that stuff's really interesting, and we're going to see, so moment by moment, how some sort of structures evolve and how Yanukovych and Putin decide to play this. So I just think I mean, it's quite gripping to follow how the hell the powers, the people with all the armed groups on their side just blow it minute by minute, because one of the things that's gripping about this is it could have so easily failed. And I remember the attention of the West, which is there when it starts up. And first, okay, is a bit of a demonstration because Ukraine isn't going to go for this EU association. But then there's some violence. And so then a really big demonstration happens. And that's because people don't like their kids being beat up, and then we all go off and have Christmas and New Year. And I remember myself thinking, well, this is cool. I love you, my people, but you're gonna have to go through winter. And I know that's really bad in this country. And so some weeks later, they show up again, and we know this is moving towards chapter 4 on January 16th, and the passage of the draconian anti-democratic laws that they passed, making every sort of demonstration illegal and every sort of self-defense illegal. But I think that what we're going to be seeing is this fascinating story of how the authorities consistently, step by step, blow it. And I'm not sure, like, is it that we came so close to losing this, or is it in fact that Ukrainian people were always gonna, in the end, win this? Because one way or another, they're not going to get duped. They're not going to get taken for a ride. Anyway, I think that's what we're about to look at. It's probably going to be next week. But that's what I'm really gripped by. And I'm remembering how myself, I'm a supporter, but I go off and do my own Christmas, New Year stuff, and I don't notice them again until the middle of January when they get these draconian laws, as my friends told me, passed, and they come out again in force after the middle of January. And I say, holy shit, they have gone through a Ukrainian winter and they're still standing.
Yeah, and that was something that Yanukovych had been banking on, that it would get cold and people would just drift away, and it did not happen. If anything, it seems to have given people more resolve. Just one little thing for the end of the chapter, then we've got a very important
You got
announcement,
a
so
heated
nobody go away.
mattress to sleep on.
Oh, jeez. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So
No, but
anyway,
really,
uh,
that's the kind of
yes,
help they needed, right?
yeah,
That's the
exactly.
kind of thing that we didn't see when we went back to our normal lives and our Christmases, and then came back, like Lexicon said, after Christmas. Like, holy crap, they're still there. It's still going on, and I feel so bad that I wasn't paying more attention to it at the time. But as did we
Yeah.
all. But
So
Lexicon's the hero who went there right after Maidan, and yeah, we're going to get to those parts of the
absolutely.
books when Lexicon shows up, like in between the lines.
Okay, so anyway, so we just have one little bit at the end of the chapter. The Automaidan was more successful in terms of setting up a hierarchy of leaders. And the leaders is interesting. They emerged from what he calls Kiev's nascent middle class. So, they use social media to organize. And the one telling event happened was after disappointing rally on the 29th of December, the Automaidan activists organized a visit to Mizahiria. This is Yanukovych's incredibly distasteful mansion. It was over 200 cars. And what happened was the regime stripped 1,500 car owners involved in the Automaidan of their driver's licenses, and other cars were torched. And Adam has a very good point here. So over to you, Adam.
Pages away. That was actually not too bad. Yeah. So, yeah.
No, Ukrainians are very proud of their cars, people who have good cars. So anyway, Adam.
But we all are. Like I am I weird? Like I'm sure you live you live in Brooklyn, so I don't even know if you have a car. But out
I've got
here,
a
the
used
Philippines,
Prius C. I'm not a big car person, but I
sick.
get it anyway.
Oh, but Toyotas are awesome. I am a car person, but so the recipe to turn mild-mannered, middle-aged, middle-class professionals into radical anti-government activists. Fuck with their sweet rides. I'm joking, but I can't imagine in the US or Canada this sort of wholesale disregard for property rights of private citizens. It's just because, you use it to get to work. Sometimes you work inside of the dang thing. It just doesn't seem like something our authorities would do except under the most extreme circumstances, especially not for a peaceful, circling we saw it happen, Lexicon, in our own country here, where these guys blocked borders, causing millions and millions of dollars of they didn't just circle parliament, they did that, but then when they started blocking border crossings and causing like billions of dollars a day of lost trade between US and Canada, only then was it sort of like, okay, we have to take away your trucks now, but not just for circling
Blockading Trudeau's
parliament,
house,
not
right?
just for blockading Trudeau's house, right? Like it's just, yeah. Anyways.
So anyway, yeah, and so we're at the end of the chapter, and I just wanted to quote the last couple of sentences, so we know going on next time. Although the Maidan camp seems safe for the duration of the Christmas holiday period, systematic repression of the protest movement was clearly being planned and executed. The early months of the coming new year would turn out to be decisive, and unfortunately, the next chapter is called Descent into Violence. So we will be doing that next week. Adam, we have an exciting announcement. And I agree with you on the times. I think that they're correct there. So would you like to make our announcement to everyone?
Well, I'm glad someone answered me. Yeah, so guys, the next episode of Volya Radio is First in the Nest. It is with our friends,
It's the Booms.
Mockers. Yeah, it's the Booms Report with Mockers and Jom. So tune in about 5 hours' time. That's 9 a.m. in Kyiv, 7 a.m. in London, 2 a.m. in New York, 11 p.m. in Los Angeles, and 2 p.m. in the Workers' Paradise. That's for you, Will.
That's Perth, Australia, for people who don't know that. Yeah, and I'll tell you guys, be there. I'm gonna set my alarm. I will probably fall asleep in the middle of it, but I'm definitely gonna try to catch at least the beginning of it. Mockers and Jom, it's a great combination, and Mockers always has great boom reports. Find out about what's going on in the last couple of days in Ukraine. So if you possibly can be there, I strongly recommend it. Great use of your time. Thank you, Adam.
Yep, we're getting things up and running, and seeing where we end up. And holy smokes, we made it through chapter 3. You're such a worrier, buddy.
Well,
Like, I just want to make it through this chapter. It's like, we just made it back.
well, that's
The arc
okay.
broke, and we
That's
had
true.
to build a new arc like in a week. And book
Yeah,
club was a little
I'm.
slow. And here we go.
Yeah,
It's all
I
right.
agree. I know. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. I am actually, when I think about it, when I think that this all happened in like what? Well, it's less than a week. How long was this? No, about a week, I guess. I mean, but we're back up and running already, and this is because everybody really hanged together. No, hung together. Hang together. We don't want to do hung together in a tremendous way. We've got people in the background who nobody sees, who don't co-host, but are incredible. Are central to the organization. We have a lot of our co-hosts. You'll be missing some names, and don't worry about them. There are some people need a little more time before they're going to be coming on co-hosting again. It's been a hard time for some of us, and the people are taking the time they need to regroup. And but we've got a great team. I mean, really amazing team, and looking forward to the future. And it's 8:59 my time, Adam. But James has his
James
hand
has
up.
a hand. 5 hours from the next episode, folks. Go ahead, James.
This is where I try to keep you up as late as possible. No, keep the space up as late as possible too, but not really. I put 2 things in the nest. The one was just adorable, funny. Putin standing with the little boy, and and Putin says, "Where do Russian borders ends?" And the kid says, "Where we get the shit beat out of us," which I just thought was lovely, lovely, very good.
That's beautiful.
Yes. And then the other thing, a little bit more serious, is I did put that essay by Snyder into the nest, and the title is Russia Attacked Ukraine Because the Russians Still Don't Know Who They Are. And this is a response to Putin's essay called on the historical unity of Russians and Ukrainians, pardon me. And so I think it's a great read. Of course, it's preserved in Ukrainian, but of course, touch of a button and it converts. So it's a very good read. It's not
I
very
read it in
long.
Ukrainian. I'm very proud to say. It's a great article in any language. Yeah.
I'm glad that you're way ahead of me. I'm just so jealous. Anyways, but no, it's great. It's a great article. It really is worth a read. And I found another one that maybe we could talk about it next week a little bit. But it is a response to the same essay by a group of Ukrainian historians, and they don't exactly
Ooh, good.
title themselves. I know it's much longer. It goes into some of the nitty gritty about some of the historical parts. And mainly what Putin does in there is he leaves out the context of things. So it's like, hey, look, I have a fact. You see this one little fact? It's unconnected to everything, but this is the whole truth, right? And so they they drum him for that. They really
Well,
do,
as they should. He's a
as they
historical
should.
ignoramus. He doesn't have a clue what he's talking
No,
about, And
no.
as you're saying, it's willfully misleading, even when he does. Yeah, thanks, James. Okay, so guys, unfortunately, one of the things that happens when we close the space is everything goes away up in the nest. So I'm gonna give people a minute or so to grab those links if it's something you want to look at later. And I guess James. Okay, the things that James put up, he has. Are in his feed, so you can go to Healy J for UC if you miss it on the way out here.
And same
Um,
with my
and
map of
yeah, and same
Maidan
with it.
and that other stuff. It's on my page.
This
And I
this is
promise
taking
not to
some
retweet
adjustment.
anything for a little while.
Okie doke. All right, Adam. I think that's it. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for joining us. It's an absolute delight to be back with everyone again. Thank you for all the contributions. And we will see you next week at the same time, same place. And don't forget about 2 a.m. Eastern for Mockers in the Boom Report if you can make it in Jom. Okay. Thanks. Okay, Adam. I'm gonna say good night and Slava Ukraini.
Heroям slava.
Heroям slava, slava Nazi, smert Moskva.
Smert Voraham.
Yes, both of those. Okay, good night, folks.
Good night, Dobranoc. We're out of here. Good night.
Welcome to For the Radio. Slava Ukraini. Welcome to For the Radio. Slava Ukraini.